Having ChatGPT for end users is of course fun and can be very valuable if you choose to grant that to your users. But the true value lies in automation and to let ChatGPT be part of your flows, your workflows, making decisions that probably it can do better than a human and in real time. So the possibilities here are endless, and I've created a use case for the case object. So I've configured data action platform in combination with flows to trigger prompts on record inserts. So when a record, in this case a case, is inserted into Salesforce, we kick off data action platform with the ChatGPT action to, for example, summarize a case using bullet points. So it's going to take a look at the subject and the description of a case. It's going to summarize it and put the summary in a custom field that I have on the page layout. I'm going to ask it to interpret the case and to decide what department in my Salesforce environment is best suitable for answering that specific question. I'm going to show you the exact prompts that I'm using for that. It is really valuable. There is also a dedicated video for specifically this subject, which Nicola can share. If you're interested in case assignment done by ChatGPT, then definitely check that out. I'm asking it to decide the case priority based on a prompt and storing the answer in a pick list, and I'm limiting ChatGPT to answering or to give an answer that is compliant with the options in my close-off select list. That's really interesting. And I'm asking it to see if the case that's coming in is potentially a spam message. And if we take a look at the capabilities of a large language model and how good it is, I think AI is perfectly capable of making these decisions and doing these tasks far better than any other product or any human, for that matter, to do a task like this. And let me first show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to show you how you can configure it. And it's actually really simple. You can do it in a couple of minutes, so that's really cool. So let's open up my case object, and I've already configured exactly what I've just showed you in the slide. I'm first going to show you what it looks like, and then I'm going to show you how to configure it. So I'm going to create a new case, and I have a case in my copy and paste list. So I'm going to add the description here by copying it. So what I'm doing, I'm putting in a really long case to see the summary capabilities of OpenAI. And we're going to call this as a subject question. So I am not setting priority. I have to set the case origin because it's a mandatory field. And I'm going to save this case. Now, after saving, a flow is now kicking off that is sending prompts automatically to OpenAI via our implementation. And it is going to fill out these fields on the right side. And as you can see, they are not filled in yet because calling the API of OpenAI, getting the response takes a bit of time. But when I refresh the page now, you can see that in a matter of seconds, it created a perfect summary to begin with based on the subject and description on the right side. It made an educated guess that this case is for sales. So if you see the select list that is behind this, we got sales, financial administration support, other, and customer success. So this is typically a sales case because, for example, it's asking for a demo, it's asking about features and capabilities of a tool. Priority set to medium. I'm going to show you in a second what the prompt behind this is. And it is saying that this is not a potential spam case. And looking at the case, I can say that I agree. So yeah, really powerful tool to get summaries. And we can do this for cases, but of course this logic can be implemented to any object in Salesforce. So that is really cool. So you can summarize tasks if you want to. You can do something with opportunities, whatever object you want to do an AI implementation on. Just to show you another example, I'm going to create another case. So you can see the priority is medium here, but if I open up a case with a higher urgency, so he actually says it's an urgent request. So maybe you can put in a subject urgent as well. And we have to set a case origin. I'm going to save it. So we got the case on the left side, the case analysis on the right side. I don't want to be too quick with my refresh, but yeah, it's already finished. So we see a really nice case summary. You can see that the department is set to support because this is really a support case. Priority is high because the customer is requesting urgency in a response because there is a problem in production. And we can see that, again, it's not identified as a spam case. So pretty powerful stuff. I have another example of a case which I can add, which is in fact a spammy kind of case in which we won the lottery. So that's cool. So I'm going to enter that one just to show you that AI is perfectly capable of seeing if something is a spam message, yes or no. So I'm going to wait a few seconds before all the calls are made. And you can see that potential spam case definitely saying yes right now. So yeah, that's, I think, really nice. Let me show you how you can set this up because it's actually pretty simple. I have a slide for you to give you an idea on where we can implement this. So in Data Action Platform, we have different ways of kicking off an action. We got the dub job, which is a batch process. So you can start a prompt on your entire existing database, enriching records, detecting spam, deciding urgency, assigning records to sales to support based on the interpretation of record information. We can do that on a scheduled basis as well. We can do it via list views, which we saw in the beginning for use case 1, but we can also start it at dynamic related lists. Another option is starting an action from Apex. So we've implemented that Data Action Platform to be able to start actions from Apex. So you can do it by scheduled Apex triggers, if that's interesting to you. And of course, this doesn't limit to using Ask ChatGPT, the new action, but to any action we have in our action library. The last way to start an action or to kick off any action that we have in our library is from flows. And we can kick off an action from any flow type. But for these use cases that I'm showing now, I've started a record I've started an action, from the record triggered flow. I'm going to show you how I can set that up right now. So I'm going to show you how I can summarize a case triggered on insert. So the first thing we have to do, we have to go to the DAP setup. And at the DAP setup, we have the action library. And to, in a flow, reference to an action that we want to execute, we have to create a macro. And a macro in Data Action Platform is a pre-configured action, which generates an API name after we create it. And by using the API name, we can reference to it in Apex or reference to it in a flow. And that's exactly what we want to do. So I can create a new macro on the top right. And I'm already copying my prompt. And then we can create a macro based on the Ask ChatGPT action. And we're going to call it summarize case. And we're going to look up the case object. Then we can decide on an icon, which will then appear in the action launcher. I'm using the robot icon, of course. Then I click next. Then we can configure the macro. And for summarizing case, I've used this prompt. So please summarize the following case in bullet points. And then I'm using the case subject and case description. And this is also the prompt that I used in the case summary action that we just saw in the demo. And as a result field, I've created a custom field called case summary. Basically, the only thing you have to do. Clicking next, you get a summary, and then you can click create. And then it's added to your action library. And if we look it up, you can see it's over here, summarize case, and we got an API name, which I'm going to copy because we are going to need that when building the flow. By default, after you create a macro, it is disabled for all profiles because we don't want by default that it's accessible to anyone right away. So if I go into the assignments of the new macro that we've created, you can see our assignment system. And here we can decide who in Salesforce has access to execute this action. So this gives us control and who has access to what. And therefore you can create the power users that you want to gain the controls that you want at a certain level. So what we can do, we can simply enable it for everything, but I can also make sure that the system administrator is able to execute this from flow, for example, or from job and list. So I can basically make any choice that I want here. We can also do it based on users. So I can also look up my user here and make sure that it's done based on users and not on profiles, because nowadays not everyone is using profiles anymore. So after I grant myself access to the macro, I can start a flow. And the flow that we're going to build is really easy. So it's going to be a record triggered flow. I'm going to click new flow and click and create. And when we set up a record triggered flow, we first have to define the object. In this case, it's going to be the case object. And I can define the trigger. So do I want to run this flow when the record is created or also while it's updated? Well, in this use case, I want to only trigger this flow while the case is getting created. I'm not setting any entry conditions, but what I do need to do is include an asynchronous path, because if we do a call from a flow, we have to do it asynchronously. We cannot do it synchronously. Clicking done, you can see that we have two paths. We have one synchronous path and one asynchronous path. And due to a limitation / a bug in Salesforce flows, this is a known issue which they're going to solve. You cannot only run an asynchronous path, you also have to do something in the synchronous path, which doesn't make too much sense. And Salesforce already said they're going to fix that part. So what I did to bypass that limitation is I'm simply updating a dump checkbox that I'm not using for any purpose, but because I'm doing that, the flow will execute. So I have dump checkbox and I'm setting that to false. So now that I'm doing something in the synchronous path, I'm able to do something in the asynchronous path as well. So I'm going to add a new action. And I'm going to look up two of the dep options that we have in flows. So we can start a macro on a single record. And in this case, the context is always single records because it is a record triggered flow that is triggered on insert. But if we have any other flow that processes records in bulk, we can also start a macro by using the dep job. So that's going to be batch processed. For now, I'm using this one, and we can then configure the action, and the label is going to be summarize the case. And flow name and version, you can, it's for your own reference, put in a version number. It's going to be in the metadata on the audit log as well. Then we have to put in the macro API name. Well, that's going to be macro summarize case, the one that we just created. And eventually, we have to decide which record is going to be processed. Well, I'm going to use the record that is currently flowing through the flow. And I'm going to look up its ID, which is going to be the case ID, this one. And then I click done. So that's basically the only thing you have to do. You can now save this flow and activate it. And it will now run on every case insert. It will call the summarize case prompt. It will call it to the OpenAI API, and it will store the response in the case summary field, which is on the case object. So it's basically as simple as that. So I think it is interesting to maybe, before we jump into some questions, because I'm sure there are many, look at the prompts that I've created for making sure that ChatGPT answers in the correct form. So if we look at the case, you can see that this is simply a large text area, right? So we can accept any response from GPT. But for department is a select list with closed off values. So the response that I need from ChatGPT has to be any of these values. Because if we now go into the cases list view, you can see that we got one from sales, one for support, and one for other. Then if we go into the individual queues, or for example, sales, you can see that because we know for what department this goes has to be or is for, we can make segmentations based on it. So it's really nice. So looking at the prompt that we then use, and this is something that you can do as well. You can build it up like this. So we receive the following customer case. We're going to give it the subject. We're going to give it the description with the field variables. And I'm asking it to please analyze the case. I'm saying, please, you have to be nice, of course, to a robot. And choose one of the following departments that is most suitable for handling this case. And these are the options that are in my close off select list. And this sentence is going to be really important then. So your response will be limited to picking one of these departments. For example, your response could be customer success, and do not reply with any words or characters. And if you build a very strict prompt like this, you will enforce and limit the response of ChatGPT, and it will always answer exactly the thing that you're looking for, and therefore you can use it in, for example, a select list. Looking at the priority prompt, so we ask ChatGPT to decide the priority low, medium, high based on the following prompt. So I'm feeding it the subject and description again. I'm feeding it the options that it can choose between. I'm saying that it is limited to picking one of these options, so it's not able to reply with anything else. And to give it some context, the priority should be set to low for non-urgent issues that don't impact core operations, medium for issues that may have a moderate impact or are time sensitive but not critical, and high for urgent matters that directly impact key operations or pose immediate risk to the organizations. And if you remember, we put in 3 cases, and one of them was indeed urgent, so it set the urgency high. One of them was medium, and the other one was low because it was that spam message that it identified as spam. So that's last prompt, spam detection. And it's actually as simple as that, but it's really powerful because I think AI is best capable of detecting if something is spam. And with a prompt like this, you can enforce it to do exactly that. So analyze the following customer case text and determine if it's potentially a spam message. Respond with yes if it appears to be spam, or no if it seems genuine. Do not respond with any other words or characters. And I'm feeding the subject and the description. And as a result, you can see that all the responses fit within my data architecture within the fields that I'm using. And therefore, I can get exactly the things out of it that I want to get out of this.